He's in the bloodline of Jesus Christ. That tells you what God had to use. If he had to use that to get to Jesus Christ, that tells you what we are and what the rest of the world is. Don't ever give this world don't ever highly esteem the things of this world in your life, because they're not of any value to God at all. I mean, Revelation 21, he's going to wipe the whole thing out. If you ever get a chance, go over and read the first two verses. He blows it all away when he's finally done with it. When he gets out of this thing what he wants, he does that. Here he goes, verse 1, it says, and he heard the words of Laban. Jacob is listening. He heard the words of Laban's son, and saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that was our father's he had gotten all his glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, return unto thy land, return unto the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flocks, and said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before. Well, I wonder why. But the God of my fathers had been with me, and ye know that with all my power I have served your father. And your father had deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. And if he said thus, speckled and spotted shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said, thus the ringstrake shall be thy wage, that hire, then bear all the cattle ringstrake. Thus God had taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. And it came to pass at that time that the cattle conceived, that I lifted up my eyes, and I saw in a dream, behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ringstrake, speckled, and grizzled. And the angel of God spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, here am I. And he said, lift up now thine eyes, and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ringstrake, speckled, and grizzled. For I have seen all that Laban doeth unto thee. And I am the God of Bethel, where thou anointed the pillar, and where thou vowest to vow unto me. Now arise, get thee from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. Jacob is doing some things right here, and he's listening. And Jacob now, at this point, after 20 years, he has 4 wives, which we talked about that last time, which is a crazy thing. I don't know why he would want to do that. I don't know why. Solomon had 1,000, and I'm telling you, that destroyed him. The man talked to God twice. Just because you can never get a relationship with God, you can lose it. I'm telling you, it can be lost easy. And Solomon had it. I mean, he had exactly what he needed. God blessed him, and women turned his heart. Women, guess what? Men can turn your heart. You got to watch that thing, man. You got to do what God says do. The flesh is one of those things, man, that you just got to deal with. It rears its ugly head. And believe me, I know it just like anybody else does. You just got to fight the thing and say, no, I know what's right. I know what's right. I know what's right. And the Lord tries to warn us, but we just don't heed that sometime. And Jacob didn't heed it. He had 4 wives. And of them, he had 11 sons and 1 daughter, Dinah. The Lord, through Jacob, had transferred the wealth of Laban to Jacob over a period of 20 years. But it's kind of an underhanded way Jacob got it. Jacob has become a mighty man in the land. I mean, he's got a lot of wealth, got a lot of money. And back then, they looked at anybody that had money and stuff in the land. Anywhere they were at, that was the guy to go for. He's the one going to help you. He's going to do it. He also had the envy of his brother-in-laws. His brother-in-law was starting to see him. They said that in verse 1. He says, and he heard the words of Laban's sons. So there's, we don't know how many. There's a couple anyway, saying Jacob had taken away all that was our father's. They're looking at their inheritance right now. It's going to be gone. We're going to lose it. It's going to Jacob. Jacob's getting it, and it's going to go down to his kids, and we're not going to have nothing. Well, first of all, why weren't you out in the field working? Why was Jacob out there doing all the work? I ain't saying Jacob is the saint here, but I mean, he's out there working. How come you weren't out there? No, you was out there partying, doing whatever else. I seen this commercial the other day, and here's these 2 guys playing. You hear me say this all the time. You're probably sick of me saying it, but I don't care. Playing this video game like it's really something. 2 grown men playing a video game. And I'm like, something is bad wrong with this picture. I mean, what is that? What is that? Are you out working? You should work. We don't even know how to work. We complain about those guys, those people coming across the border down there or wherever they coming across. And But they're workers. They'll go out and pick corn. They'll go out and pick stuff. They'll go out and pick the fruit that you eat. You go to Kroger's and get. We won't lower ourselves to do that no more. We won't fix. I was in, where was that? I was in Lowe's, Home Depot, one of them. And there was a guy in front of me, a couple people in front of me, and he's talking to another guy, the guy right in front of me. And they're talking about a plumber. He said, I can't afford a plumber to come out. He said, I took 2 weeks off work to fix my problem. And it looked like he just had a couple things to fix, like the sink. So maybe it's going to take him 2 weeks to fix the sink. I don't know. But at least he's going to try. But I'm like, I'm listening at this conversation. I'm like, that is about the most ignorant conversation I've ever heard in my life. I'm like, you're going to pay a plumber $120 an hour, and they usually send 2 out, so that's $220 an hour, to come into your house and fix a little problem. And I mean, if they got to come with backhoes and all that stuff, I got it. But I just didn't try to rent a backhoe myself and try it ourselves before we try anything else. But we don't have, we've raised an entire generation that doesn't even have an idea how to do that. We think you go to work 40 hours a week, you get a paycheck, and that's it. That's Laban's sons. Jacob's out there in the middle of the field working night after night, day after day, 20 years into this thing. And his brother-in-laws are envious of him now because they see that the wealth has been transferred and that the men of the land, they probably out there partying with all these people all the time because that's where they should be. But Jacob's doing the work. Why should we care? We'll let Jacob do all the work. But all these people out there are probably saying now, hey, Jacob's a pretty mighty man in the land. Jacob is a pretty mighty man in the land. And Laban is not being talked about anymore. Laban, on the other side, couldn't and hasn't said much up to this point because he was the one that made the deal. Laban had to shut his mouth. He couldn't say a word. Jacob, and it gets on a few other things here in a few minutes we'll get into, but Jacob made a deal with Laban, and Laban said, yeah, and he's honorable up to this point, and he was going to abide by the deal, but Laban didn't like it, but his sons started talking and brought it up. Now Laban is starting to get a little upset. It says, and Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, verse 2, and behold, it was not as toward him as before. Laban started seeing that, hey, I'm making a lot of money, but the thing started transferring. And little by little, time and chance happen to every man. If you don't watch your stuff, there's verses in the Bible that tell you to watch what's going on. Be very careful. Watch the state of the flocks in the church. The Lord tells us to do all kinds of stuff. You're supposed to be very, what's the word I'm looking for? Aware of what is going on around you, your surroundings, and be ready to make a move at any given time. I talked to a friend of mine the other day, and he was talking about what's going on in the world. And even our governments around the world are saying, there's going to be an altercation between China and America within 2 or 3 years. And you better get rid of it. And a lot of people, it ain't going to happen. Well, you better watch out what happens. Russia's coming in on one side, China's on the other. China's feeding Russia right now because they're getting the gas and everything cheaply over there. They can do their stuff. The technology we've already transferred to China, so they got everything we've got. They may not have the quantities we got, but they got what we got. They want Taiwan. Taiwan's a lot closer to them and China, and it's just an amazing thing. We're flying our planes right now with Japan, and in World War II, we were at war with them, and they blew up. Within 67 years, brethren, we are some stupid people, ignorant. We have the technology in America. God's gave America some of the greatest minds in the world, but the way we got them is kind of Jacob anyways. When World War II was over, we went over and snagged just about all the German scientists that we could get so we could make a bomb. Brethren, we are, everything isn't as pure and holy and clean and pure. And you hear people say, I'm an American, praise God, I'm an American too. And there's not the nation on this planet I would rather be in than America. But we got some things that are going on that ain't just about right. And that's why I always if I look in the Bible, I like Abraham. Abraham's up on the side of the mountain. He lived up there. He had 300 or 400 people up there. Well, he said he had 300 armed men trained in his own house. So he had quite a few people. If they were all married, he had 300 women plus 300 guys, and then all their kids if they had two each. You're probably looking at 1,500, 2,000 people that he's taking care of, plus all the flocks he's got and all the other stuff and herds and everything else that he's got. And you sit there and look at that thing. Abraham was up on the side, and he did it. He come out from among them, be ye separate, saith the Lord. Abraham had the right idea. We move right into the cities, and we live in those cities. And he said, Lot, let me get that, man. Lot was down in Sodom. and he vexed his righteous soul daily. I mean, that's what Lot did. And he sit there daily. So if you're not if you're not trying to keep that out of your life, then what you're going to do is that thing's going to eventually get a hold of you. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a fight. I was reading Sam Gibbs' letter, and Dr. Sam Gibbs, and he's talking about it's a fight, just a constant fight. Let me see if I can find it here real quick. Yeah, I don't. It's probably in Peter, the one I'm looking for. It was talking about Lot vexed his righteous soul daily, and it does, man. You'll do that. The world does it. You got to fight the thing. I mean, it's just the more you're attached to it, the more it's going to get you, and the more you're going to say, no, it hasn't got me. Well, it has got us. It's got our group of people today. Our young people have been exposed to some things that this world wasn't exposed to for 6,000 years, and now all of a sudden we're exposed to them, and we're living in that thing. And the only reason all those migrants can come across the border down there isn't just because the borders are open. It's because there's jobs available for them to have, and they're getting them because we won't go down and work for them anymore. We have got. I was talking to Esther yesterday, and she goes, "Well, we've become sophisticated." I said, "Yeah, that's the problem, right there." But since his sons had brought it up, now Laban, his sons brought this up to his dad. Now Laban's got right to get mad. Jacob is feeling a little bit of heat. Verse 2, Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. Jacob is just feeling the heat. 20 years, Laban has been watching him, and it's extended to his family, and about this time he realizes that something has to be done, and that has to be done soon. Verse 3, and the Lord said unto Jacob, it's amazing how the Lord always comes in right at about the right time. Sometimes the Lord will allow things in our lives, even if we do it, he'll allow things in our lives to just upset the boat, rock the cart, make you stop and think. Something has got to change. Something isn't right about this thing. I got to change the thing. And you may not know what to do, but I got to give Jacob the hand. At least he does listen. He says, return unto thy land, the land of thy fathers, and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. 20 years Jacob's been gone. Verse 4. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field unto his flocks. Now watch what happens here. This is some of the funniest stuff you'll ever read. And he said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that it is not toward me as before, but the God of my fathers have been with me. True, that's a true statement. The whole thing is, and his father's countenance isn't the same. And ye know that with all my power I have served your father. Now, there is something in that, what he just said, which is an amazing thing. You ought to do everything. I like this. Ecclesiastes 9:10 says this, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do with all thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. You ought to do everything you got with everything you got. If you can't put 150% in what you're doing, you shouldn't do it. If you're working for somebody, you ought to give them every single thing you got. And do it the way the Lord. Do it as unto the Lord. Colossians 3:22 says this, servants. That's what you do when you say I'm going to work for somebody, you're signing a piece of paper saying I will do for you what you need done. There is a line, there's a fine line there somewhere where you got to watch what you got to do. Servants obey. You shouldn't do something wrong. If they tell you to do something wrong, hang it up, man. They're on their own. I was in the Navy. The Navy never asked me to ever do anything wrong until that one time. And they asked me to do something wrong. I said, I'm done. So there has to be a place in there where you draw the line. You'll go so far, you won't go no further. People always used to laugh at me. Captain would hold his hands and say, don't tell me what you're going to do. I just want you to do this, but don't tell me how you're going to do it. Because he said, I have to lock you up. Well, no, you wouldn't. I just reappropriated government property. I just kind of moved it around on the base. I didn't necessarily steal it. It's still government property, and it still was there to that day. It's just that we utilized it over here better than they could utilize it over there. That was all it was. And I did everything right. I mean, we had receipts and everything for transferring stuff back and forth. But the captain always said it, but it says, servant, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God, and whatsoever you do, do heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. Man, you ought to find a way that you're going to do something for God. You're doing it for God. I try to do everything I do for the Lord. Now, I'm telling you, if you watch me, you can say, well, you do this, and you do that, and you do this, and you're a lazy slug right there, and you're a sluggard, and you're this and that. Yeah, and you're probably right. I wouldn't. No man's perfect. We're all a mess. But I try to give as much as I possibly can to the Lord. And I thank God for my wife. Beth does the same thing. She ticks me off worse than I am. It's bad enough that I do stuff, but she does it too. And I do it, and then when she does it, it's like, wait a minute, you're giving away my other stuff. I said, I'm giving away this stuff, but you're giving away all my other stuff. And so she has her eyes on a group of stuff over here that she thinks she can give away. But that's a good thing. And Jacob sent and called Rachel, verse 4, and Leah unto the flock. And she's talking about her husband, their dad. And the girls are willing to follow. Ladies, you need to understand where your loyalties lie. If you choose to get married, your loyalty lies with your husband. You want God to bless you. If you don't care, that's fine. That's fine. But if you want God to bless that thing, believe me, be not deceived. God is not mocked. Isn't just to a guy. It's to anybody. And what we sow will come back on us. It'll come back. Not guaranteed 100% that it'll always come back. Unless the Lord has grace and mercy, and he does, long-suffering, and sometimes he can hide stuff. But I'm telling you, it could come back. I'm ready for just about anything to come back at any given time. I don't really care. I told the Lord, I said, you know everything I ever did, so it's in front of you. If you deem it necessary for me to get slammed or beat up or banged up on or whatever you think I should have, I'm fine with that, man. Do it. It doesn't matter. I'm telling you, most of us, we worry about that. I don't really care what anybody thinks about me. What I care about is what God thinks about me. And when you care about what God thinks about you, guess what? You'll naturally care about what everybody else thinks. Because then you're trying to be the example that you're supposed to be in front of everybody else. Laban isn't that, and neither is Jacob here, by the way. He says, but God, God of my fathers, had been with me. See, he didn't say God, my God has been with me. He said the God of my fathers. So Jacob really hasn't made God his God yet. 20 years into this thing, and he hasn't. Have you ever struggled trying to get the Lord into something you're doing or trying to find the Lord? Can you just tell me how to do it? No, I can't tell you how to do that. You got to figure that thing out on your own. I can give you can get all the lessons in the whole wide world. You can have all the Bible studies you want. I've had people, they've been in Bible studies for 40 years and still haven't learned a thing. People say, well, you can go through this Bible. Yeah, I could go through this a lot quicker. I could be done with Genesis 31 in about 10 minutes and go on to, I could be through 5 chapters of Genesis in a day if I wanted to. But the whole point is, what are you trying to learn here? It says, servants obey in all things. Jacob had something that is a quality that would be a good thing for all of us to get. He was out there in the middle of the night, and he was out there freezing and cold and everything else for 20 years, taking care of the thing. But it wasn't as unto the Lord. Jacob is kind of a sneaky little guy here. And it says, and whatsoever ye do heartily. He did it heartily, not as unto the Lord. Do you put the Lord in everything you do? Knowing, here's the rest of that verse, knowing that the Lord, now see, this is Colossians. I'm going to give you the verse again so you don't forget it. Colossians 3:22. 24 says this, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. But he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he had done, and there is no respect of persons. My kids, you ask my kids, I love all my kids. I really do, man. They're phenomenal. To me, they are. They're all doing great. Esther, we got some issues there, but that's okay. She's working them out. She's doing pretty good. But they're all still here. They're still in church. I had preacher after preacher ask me how I kept my kids in church, and I don't know myself. They're here today. They have to put up with me, but like you have to put up with me. I don't understand how anybody puts up with me, but they do, and you have, and I thank God for that, and they're still here, and I love all my kids. But they know that in this church, they are equal to anybody else who walks in that door. I say that in front of you. I've said that in front of them. If they do something spectacular, guess what? They'll get credit, and I'll get the praise from me just like anybody else would. I've had people say, well, you only pick out certain people. No, I don't pick out anybody. I tell you what, there's a door right there. You got a bunch of instruments in there. You got a door over here with a bunch of instruments in there. You got an organ and a piano sitting up here. If you want to play those things, you can. There's certain people who play during the church services. You ain't going to get that. Sorry, that's taken. There's Sunday school classes that unless somebody mess up, you're not going to get those either. But if you want to learn how to play an instrument, there's instruments here to play. If you come up to me and say, hey, would you help me? Yeah, I'd help you. But people say, oh, no, you only let certain people. No, I don't. You want to do a special? You can do a special. I'll let you do a special. I'll let anybody. But in a church, you cannot be a respecter of any person. The Lord isn't, and I can't be. You're going to have to get with the Lord. You know how you do that? You get with the Lord, and you start working it. And what he does is he starts lifting you up. And he's the one doing it, not anybody else. If you let that thing go the right way, it'll always be that way. And people are going to get mad. I had people come through here thinking that just because they come in and do some things that they should be immediately elevated to a stature of leadership. No, sorry not, man. You gotta be doing something for the Lord. You got to be seen. He goes, but he that doeth wrong. Now that's Paul talking. He that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he had done, and there is no respect of persons. The best thing you can do, I'm going to tell you this right now. If you ever get in trouble and you do something wrong, get it under the blood. Go to 1 John chapter 1, verse 8, 9, and 10, and get it under the blood. And let the Lord hide the thing. I said that be honest. You know, if you confess your faults, he said if you confess your sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. But anyways, back to this. Verse 7. And your father had deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. No, Jacob, come on now. Jacob, let's be honest. You deceived Laban and Laban deceived you. You were supposed to be taking care of the flocks of Laban and you're out there manipulating them. Wait a second. Oh, well, he's been so mean to me. Jacob's a liar. He's just a stinking liar. That's all he is. I know you may want to think, well, he's in the bloodline. Yeah, God used some pretty bad people in the bloodline too. So you don't have to change my wages 10 times. And Jacob probably did, but God suffered him not to hurt me. And God does. You know what the amazing thing here is? The Lord still watches over you. Here's Jacob, a mess. And the Lord he's right there. God is watching over him. Not protecting him completely Jacob is still doing his thing. God will let you do all kinds of stuff. I've heard people say, oh, look what the Lord has done. I'm like, you stinking conniving devil dog, you. I sit there and watched you do something that was totally wrong, and now you're trying to get God. Well, that's what Jacob is. Let me go on. If Jacob in what Jacob stated, if what Jacob stated is correct, Laban perceived that his wealth was being shifted to Jacob, and he was probably trying to reverse the trend. He changed my wages 10 times. Over 20 years, let's say 2 times a year, or once every other year. Laban probably watched Jacob, and he started watching some of the ring straight going this way. He goes, oh, let's change that to speckled and spotted. And then he changed it to something else and something else. And the Lord had to be in some part of that because he goes on down, but Jacob is doing something too. You can't do that. But the Lord, I got another note here saying, but the Lord protected Jacob, and Laban probably knew this and didn't do what was in his heart to destroy Jacob. Jacob sits there and says, but he said, change my wages 10 times, but God suffered him not to hurt me. Jacob knew the whole time that Laban was trying to get him. Now, this is a picture of a man's life in this world, and you don't have to do what Jacob did to get what he got. You don't have to do the underhanded stuff. The blessings will come there naturally. Genesis 12:1 is already there. He says, and I will bless them. Verse 3, he says, and I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So God's promise is coming through no matter what. It's going to come down that bloodline, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob to Judah, all the way down. And it's going to come right down to Jesus Christ, and the families of the earth are going to be blessed. That's just the bottom line. In a way, in World War II, Hitler and all the Germans, they got mad at him because the Jews just kept making money. And the wealthy part of the country was the Jews, and they just got madder and madder. The whole world hates that. You start messing with a Jew, and a Jew going to make, it's just the way God's got. That's how you know God's who he says he is. It has to be supernatural at a certain point where the Lord does this, but they don't know it. They don't even care. Verse 8, it says, if he, look at that, man, 34. If he said thus, speckled shall be thy wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. Now, here's where I think the Lord got into it somewhere. And if he said thus, the ring straight shall be thy hire, then bear all the cattle ring straight. I don't know if Jacob could manipulate with the rods the way he did, but he did somehow, and the Lord had to get in this. Genesis 30, verse 37 says that Jacob took him rods of green poplar. I'm going to refresh your mind on what he did. And of hazel and chestnut trees, and peeled white streaks in them, and made the white streaks appear that was in the rods, which were in the rods. And he set the rods, which he had peeled before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering trough, when the flocks came to drink, that they should conceive when they came to drink. Now, it doesn't tell you if he put a poplar rod in by itself, a poplar and a chestnut or hazelnut, or a poplar and a, what was the other rod? It was a hazel and a chestnut tree. I mean, it could have been a mix of the rods as they were that gave you a certain thing. But Jacob used sorted ways of the time to manipulate the flocks of Laban. Somehow he knew what to do. He was entrusted, and I said this a few minutes ago, and I'll say it again, he was entrusted with the care of Laban's flocks. He was supposed to be caring for the flocks, and he was manipulating those flocks so he could take them. He was stealing from Laban is what he was doing, trying to give God the credit. When you work for somebody, brother, I mean, if the man pays you or the lady pays you a wage, then take that wage and do something with the wage, but don't steal from the place. I would never be a good union worker. I could not be it. Because a union worker, well, let's see if I'm going to step on somebody. I'm going to shut up. I'll shut up right there. I better not say another thing past that. He was entrusted to the care of Laban's flocks, and instead he tampered with the things he was in charge of. That would be like me going in and they make you sign disclosures now when you go to work for somebody that if you quit them, after it take a year or two, you can't go work for somebody else in the same type of field because you can take your secrets to them and they can make money off you and all that other stuff. But he says, and he introduced chemicals into the water that would cause abnormalities in the breeding stock. It was birth defects. So he was causing that to happen to those sheep. However he was doing it, that's what he was doing. And it worked. It worked perfectly fine. You got a Bible here that says it happened. Thus God had taken away the cattle of your fathers and given them to me. It's bad enough that he's sitting there saying that he's bringing God into this thing and saying, look at God's blessed. No, you're manipulating the flock. Now, brethren, if you're not doing a thing and you're minding your own business, and you go out there and you plant some seeds in your field and they grow and your field grows and you make lots of stuff and he gives you 2 sheep and you have 2 sheep and they grow and all of a sudden they have 10 sheep and the 10 sheep have 100 sheep and 100 sheep have 1,000 sheep. And that just naturally flows from what you have. That's God. But when you start manipulating stuff like Jacob was doing here, Jacob is a conniver. Now, you look at his life, all the stuff that happened to him, I don't feel sorry for one bit what they did to Joseph. Now, I feel sorry for Joseph going through what he went through, but he had to go through that for his dad. You know, sometimes parents will do stuff that cause our kids harm. We do it. And we do it and thinking, oh, I'm doing the right thing. Really? Is God in that thing? How in the world could you possibly know what the right thing to do is if you don't know what God said? How could you possibly know that? You can't. Well, if I put them in this, how do you know that's the right thing? You're influencing them with something at a very young age that maybe they should or should not be influenced. I was talking to Andrew the other day, and I'm a lousy dad, man. I already know I'm a lousy dad. He's here. I mean, he's sitting back there. His wife's sitting there, got a couple grandkids out of him. Hopefully they'll have like a 10, 15 more. Because I was like, no. But I'm telling you, man, it's if I could go back. What's her name? Fonda. What's the Fonda lady? Who? Jane Fonda. I was going out today doing something on Yahoo. I was looking at my mail, and they have the screen come up. Here's Jane Fonda. I wish I was a better mother. I wish she was a better human. I mean, but it's kind of late now to be a grandma. She goes, I just never knew what to do. Well, you're just too busy doing everything else you shouldn't be doing. You know how you learn how to do something? You stop everything else and you do what you're supposed to do. That's how I learned electronics. I stopped everything in the world. And I lived at a Navy base in Great Lakes, Illinois for 2.5 years, 2 years, a little bit more than that. And I spent 15 hours a day in classes and in downstairs working on nothing but electronics. That's what I did. That's what I did. I didn't have nothing else. I ate, I slept, and I worked. I ate, and I slept, and worked. I ate and slept and worked. I ate and slept and worked. And when I got done, I was number one. I never thought I was going to be number one. I was just number one. I didn't know how I got to number one. I thought I was the most stupid person in the class, but I was number one. And the detailer knew it too. When I called Washington, he goes, oh, Elliott, hey, you're number one. What do you want? I mean, all of a sudden, number one gives you a lot of stuff in this world you don't think that you're going to ever get. You don't even think nobody's watching, but they're watching, and the Lord's watching too. Jacob is doing some things he's getting busted for. And if it was not enough, he tried to get to say, God, the God of the universe did this for me. God did this for me. He didn't do a thing for you. And it came to pass, verse 10, at the time the cattle conceived, that I lifted up my eyes and I saw in a dream. I had a dream. Somebody else said that. Behold, I had a dream. And behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ringed, straight, speckled, and grizzled. At that time, the cattle did conceive Jacob, but Jacob had already placed the rods in the watering troughs. That's like coming in the after effect, doing something wrong, and then asking God to bless it. He won't do that. Brother, I'm telling you, at 65, I'm learning. It's a hard lesson. You sit back and just let things happen. I'm watching all you guys. I'm kind of letting you all do whatever you want to do. I can't really get in your lives because I don't know what you're doing 24/7. You know what you're doing 24/7. I have enough problems with me trying to keep up with me for 24/7. And I'm looking at people and saying, I realize your lives are moving so fast that I can't even keep up with what's going on in society right now. The Lord has to do that. I can't do it. I mean, people have green hair, purple hair, gray hair, black hair, orange hair, purple. Big earrings, gauges, this, that. Their noses got stuff all over them. They're talking and got stuff all in their face. Tattoos all up and down their arms. You don't even know if they're real tattoos anymore. I seen a guy the other day peel one off. It looked real up to the time he peeled it off. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with this stuff anymore. And you sit there and look, and every time they'll show you a football stadium or a basketball stadium, soccer stadium. How about overseas? I'll go to. They call it football. It's not football, man. It's soccer. I guess it's soccer. They kick a ball around on the ground. That's not football. Well, you kick it with your foot. Maybe it's a better term of football than what we have. Maybe we should have throw ball or something. I don't know. Maybe we got ours named wrong. I don't know what it is. But you look at those stadiums out there and all those people go, and I don't see y'all ever doing that. How come y'all aren't doing that in church? Yeah. Praise God. I've been in churches, man, where they get excited. You guys aren't quite getting to the excited level yet, man. There's a problem. We're going to work on that. We got to work on that thing. That's why I'm giving out those prayer books. I'm figuring if y'all get to praying, something's going to change in our lives. You don't have to do that, by the way. I'm just joking. But you see that, and they get worked up in a frenzy. They used to do that at rock concerts. I mean, down at the front down there, man, you never want to be down in the front row. You get all squished down there. You get 1,000 people moving in one direction, and if you're in the wrong place, like between the wall and them, you're going to get squished. At the time they conceived, Jacob already planted the rods in the troughs to induce a change in the birth of the animals. Jacob tries to say God did this, which he clearly did not. Now here's people always try to come up and say it was God because of the rods. Well, there aren't many hard and fast rules about what you do during your pregnancy. Now, women, when they have babies, they come up and tell them all kinds of stuff. You got to watch certain foods. You talk to certain women. I mean, every woman has the same different things. Certain foods you got to watch. You can't eat raw meat. Well, I didn't think we could eat raw meat anyway. Oh, sushi, man. What is up with that sushi garbage? People just eat that stuff. Shellfish. Uncooked seafood. Why would you eat uncooked seafood? I have no idea anyways. Why would you? I think it should be medium well to well or burnt black. It should be when a bowl of beans, chili should scrape off the bottom, man. I mean, it should already be burnt down there. Including oysters. My uncles, they used to buy trash cans full of oysters. Forget it, man. Ain't gonna happen in this kid's life. They'd have it full of ice, and they'd get their beer. I'm not saying this is what you should do. I'm just telling you what they did. And you'd have to be drunk to do that. They'd get hot sauce. You got to have the hot sauce. How come you're putting all this stuff on there and doing all this stuff to swallow that thing and have it slide down your throat? You pop it open, shoot the hot sauce on it, you eat it. You can't taste the thing. What's the purpose of eating? And you got to get drunk to do it. I said, no, can't do it. But a lady, certain foods, you got to watch certain foods. You don't want to eat certain foods. Certain foods will mess you up. Why? It'll put birth defects in the child. Well, that's the same thing Jacob was doing. He was putting stuff in those troughs to cause those sheep to do. He was manipulating the flock of Laban. Brother, now that is about as wrong as you can get. You know what? God's just sitting there watching. He's watching. And he's watching us too. Believe me, he's watching. I tell every one of y'all, I'm a Jacob. They say James in Greek, translated over to Hebrew, is Jacob. And I know that I'm out for the best deal. If you've been around me, Mike will tell you, I'm out for the best deal all the time. And I got to watch myself because that'll put me in a place sometimes to get in trouble. And I still do it to this day. I'll catch myself after. I say, I can't believe you did that. I usually give stuff away. It's easy. Like in prayer book. The Lord gives you a verse in the Bible. Buy the word and sell it not. Well, that doesn't seem like a good deal. You buy a Bible and you give it away. Why would you do that? You lose money doing that. No, you don't. Because the Lord watches what you do, and on the other side somewhere or here around, he'll do something that you won't even think he's doing. But he'll impress. He says, buy the word and sell it not. You know what you ought to do? You ought to buy stuff. Those prayer books I got 3 or 4 more of them. And if you want one, come and see me. If you promise me you'll read it, I'll give you one. I'm not saying you have to read it like overnight, but continually start working on reading it. I'll give you one. You know why? It'll change your life. I believe it'll change your life. Wet paint. They're worried about ladies being pregnant painting stuff. Why? Because there's lead and all kinds of stuff. Caffeine. That's an abomination. You can't drink coffee. You can't drink anything with caffeine. That just about eliminates everything that you drink other than water. Certain medications, I got that, man. You don't want to take heroin or cocaine or something like that. But pain relievers like muscle relaxers, come on now. I'm glad men don't get pregnant. I mean, I really am. Y'all, ladies, y'all do this. Beth stayed away from everything. When she had Andrew, she stayed away from it. It's amazing. She did it to Elizabeth. She did it to Esther, Sarah. She did it to Jesse. Stayed away from everything. I mean, she was just that way. How about this? Stilettos. Ladies, your high heels. I said, what in the world has that got to do with it? They said you get all balanced and fall over and squish a baby. I mean, they said stick with high heels. Now, this is stuff that can affect a pregnancy. That's what I'm trying to get across here. Jacob knew how to affect the pregnancy of some animals. So many times we read that thing and we think it's some mysterious voodoo thing that went on. It wasn't that. Jacob knew exactly what he was doing. And he did it for 20 years over a period of time. Hot tub and saunas. I don't have a hot tub or sauna, so I don't really care. Kitty litter. I like that, man. I think you should stay away from kitty litter if you're not pregnant. That means don't have a stinking cat. But that's me. That's me. Some people have kitties. I seen Elizabeth. Elizabeth had Riley the other day. All these, you ought to see, my telephone, about 99.9999% of it is the kids and their kids. So if it's not Bella and Alex or Wally, it's Riley. So here's Riley dragging this plastic bag around. And when she stops, there's a cat in it. I'm like, that's what it should, but you should seal the top, Riley. We need to teach her how to seal it. And where you see the bag go, oh, that's probably mean. And then after a while, it'll quit doing that. You won't have to worry about it. Then you just throw it over the side. How come you only see them throw cats over the side of bridges? You don't see them. But anyways, ladies are supposed to stay away from kitty litter. I don't know what kitty litter does to you, actually. But you shouldn't change the kitty litter. You shouldn't have kitty litter. You should wear gloves. You should let your husband change the kitty litter. Do something else. Secondhand smoke, I got that one. Stay with that. Alcohol, shouldn't be around alcohol or drugs and stuff of that nature. Sitting or standing too long, that pretty much eliminates everything you do in life. I mean, how in the world? But the last one here got me more than all of them. This one was it says, and believing everything you read. Well, I just read a bunch of stuff. Do I believe any of that? You wrote a whole bunch of stuff, and I copied this from a lady, and said, you wrote a whole bunch of stuff. But by what you're saying here, I shouldn't believe a thing you just said. I mean, it's crazy. But why I said all that is Jacob knew exactly what he was doing when he was doing that to Laban. And, brethren, if anything else out of this lesson, the Lord knoweth them that are his. I'm telling you, he knows Jacob is his. And he allows us to do some really stupid stuff sometimes. And he doesn't necessarily bring the hammer down on our head. And that ought to make you love him like you've never loved anybody. Because I look at this kind of stuff and I said, Lord, I'm no better than Jacob in most cases. And I said, and I watched what you did. And I've tried that. I mean, I've told y'all, I went into my bosses. They tried to give me raises. No, keep it, man. Take some back. I've done that more than once. I never, ever tried to take a test in the Navy. I never did. They forced me to take the test. That black bosun mate down in Fort Gordon, Georgia, when I was at an Army base, that guy called me into his office, told me I was ready to take the E5 exam, signed off my PARs, and he was a bosun mate, paint chipper. He didn't even know how to turn a car radio on. He could barely start his own truck, probably, if he had one. And I'm sitting there going, this guy tells me to go take my test. The only test I ever took that I had to take, I went in the Navy as a seaman. So that's an E3 off the bat. 6 or 8 weeks, 10 weeks into ETA school, 6 weeks into ETA school, I had to take a test. And if you didn't, you finished this test, then you had to take this test. This test right here was your E4 exam. You had to take it. There was no way out of it. It was part of the course. You had to take it. The moment you took that test, if you failed it, they kicked you out. You do not have the ability to become an ET. You can't learn it. They kick you out. And then I think they might have given you another chance next week to take the test over. If you failed it again, they kicked you out. And you went to the fleet as a bosun mate or whatever they wanted you to be. But that made E4. From there on out, I never, ever sought to take a test. I was forced to take every test I took. And I took them just so they'd leave me alone. I was perfectly happy fixing stuff. I was perfectly happy being right where I was at. And I watched the Lord bless almost everything I touched. You say, why would he do that? I've seen people mad, just like Jacob right here, Laban. I've seen people mad because of what was happening, and I never tried to do anything. I watched God do it. It works both ways. You can do it your way, and you're going to get people mad, and it may be some success to what you're doing, but in the end of that thing, God's not in it, and he's still got a plan that he's got. It's his plan. He's going to do what he wants to do. And you got to somehow get to the place where you trust him. Let's see, where was that? After all this stuff, and the angel of the Lord spake unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, verse 11, here am I. And he said, lift up now thine eyes and see. There's another verse in here. He tells him to, verse 13. It says, now rise, get thee out from here of this land and return. 20 years. The Lord finally talks to him again and says, hey, Jacob, it's time to go home. You got everybody just about mad at you here. It's time to go back and deal with the stuff that you caused 20 years ago. It took me 20 years to get Esau to calm down. Now let's go back. But Jacob, brethren, he's the peace of God that passes all understanding. Jacob has still got that in the back of his mind. Man, I messed Esau up. But he is obeying the Lord. The Lord told him what to do. He's doing what the Lord told him to do. Jacob is going to learn some things. Guess what? We learned some things. But it's a great book. You know what you got to do? You look at these characters and say, am I like that? Lord, am I manipulating things to get what I want? Or am I letting you guide and direct my steps? Am I going to be here for 20 years trying to figure out what I'm going to do and what I'm going to get? And believe me, this life is short. I looked in the mirror today, and Beth cut my hair yesterday, and it's all turning gray. I'm like, what is up with that, man? Mike's already went. I'm like, you're getting old, man. I don't like mirrors anymore. I'm glad we got rid of all the girls. I'm getting rid of all of them. Father, thank you for your blessing. Thank you for a Bible that we can hold in our hands.